So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and this one is actually going to be a custom scenario that was made by Captain Gervais, but he actually isn't a part of this battle, which actually did result in some confusion, because there were clearly rules attributed to this particular scenario that we had to kind of guess at what they were for reasons that will become incredibly apparent as we go through the army compositions, but first of all we'll have a little look at the map. It is going to be a Gondorian assault on an Umbar port haven, so it's going to be pretty interesting, I have to say. Umbar obviously very strong as far as doing damage for an infantry faction is. Gondor also strong for an infantry faction but a little bit more defensive, but they're going to have to try and turn that to their advantage on the attack here, or should I say we, because I'm actually playing in this battle and I'm going to be one of the Gondorian attackers. But it's actually a pretty nice map. There's a few rough edges, I will say. Like the one thing that I was going to do was actually wait to show this one, because there are a few things that are obviously not right. Like there's a wall jutting out there into mid-air and so on and so forth. So it's possible that he would have wanted to tweak this a little bit. But actually, I'm going to show it anyway because it was actually a very close battle, which is always a nice thing. It's a themed battle, which obviously I'm blue in the face at saying that over and over lately, but always on the lookout for more of them. And also, there's also a new feature which is mostly going to be, well, it's only going to be really single player and custom scenarios that it's going to be seen in. It isn't entirely new, but it is something which has it's something that's cropped up before, but it only now is it going to become maybe a little bit more prevalent in scenarios like this and more of a mainstay, and that is going to be army-wide abilities. So instead of the normal rallying horn that the generals unit has access to, which they do still have, they have a limited number of uses of a particular army-wide special ability. So for example, if I used it for my general, it wouldn't apply to all of the Gondorian players, it would just apply to my particular wing of the army. So for Umbar, each of their armies can use their special ability once, and I believe what it does is it increases their attack score and it makes them immune to fatigue for a short period of time, about a minute or so I believe, which can make all the difference, because if you have your units fresh in melee for longer, they're going to be able to put up much more of a fight, and of course that additional attack is really going to come in handy against a lot of Gondor's more defensive focused units. And for Gondor it's kind of the opposite really, in the sense that what it does is we can use it twice, but the same thing applies, obviously same sort of time limits, and it will increase our defense and make us much more resilient against arrows, which particularly when you're on the attack is going to be very, very useful indeed, because when you start going in for a big push, you can flick the arrow resistance on, and you can start to, obviously you're going to be able to absorb a lot more punishment, but obviously that is going to be limited somewhat. Stuff like javelins and crossbows, even with that arrow resist, are still going to do a lot of damage, maybe to a slightly lesser extent, but it's only going to help your cause. It's not going to make you completely overpowered and just able to run through stuff. As we do find out in this battle, actually, it does help you, but you can't lean on it too heavily. So that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see, actually, how that changes from sort of scenario to scenario, because you could make your own. It doesn't have to be only one for each faction, so Gondor could have like a new ability in another scenario to sort of better fit what they're trying to do there, and so on. And it gives you a sort of another tool to try and sort of really focus the defense around, which is nice, and we will see that in action. Obviously it doesn't have any sort of visual effect, but still. So we'll go through the attacking armies first and foremost, and now is a good time to talk about the overall lay of the land here. So obviously pretty standard as far as a settlement goes. It's obviously a pretty neat layout, actually, a hill in the middle, some islands here at the back that you could potentially try and defend. But Umbar are going to be obviously defending through all of these choke points, and then obviously the hill in the middle. But it's not all cut and dry, because half of my army, or at least a good chunk of my army, are prisoners. So they are going to be stuck back here. Now, it was sort of decided, I'm not sure whether it was intended that you have to reach the prisoners before they can leave, or whether it's just a certain amount of time before you can use them, but we decided to use our discretion, and effectively it was up to me when to try and mount a prison break. And considering the quality of units I have over here, Gondor militia infantry, bandits, civilians, there's also some standard infantry and spears and some unupgraded axemen of Lasarnak. The only sort of really high quality unit I have here is a unit of Citadel Guard, which is actually my general, but there's only 52 of them, so again, like, that's something, there's a bit of a trade-off there. So it's not the most high quality cluster of units over here, but it was up to me when to move forward. But obviously if I do that too soon, my general is more than likely going to perish very, very quickly, and then that takes away my ability to use my army-wide special abilities, and obviously all of the other downsides that losing your general unit has. So I've got to be careful, but also it was within reason, it was up to me to decide when to commit these units forward. I couldn't just do it like right from the off, because obviously that would kind of ruin the balance of the game. But when the battle is fully underway for the settlement, that's when I can start thinking about using these units in a bit of a prison break. And it obviously does mean that the defenders are going to have a little bit something extra to pay attention to. The main body of my army over here, albeit it's a rather small army, considering most of my units are, a good section of my units are imprisoned within the settlement, is a decent quality one though. I've got some marksmen of Caer Andros backed up by some Gondor militia archers. That is my ranged corps. So one sort of lower quality unit for skirmishing, one which is going to be of higher quality. I've got some Fountain Guard obviously, which are absolute monsters in melee. Should be good against Umbar as well with all the AP that they have. Yeah, really strong. Some Wardens of the White Tower to hold things together. Under normal circumstances they'd be a general's bodyguard unit, but in this case they are just the relief party, and I can use them a little bit more freely. Got some Gondor Spearmen with the first level of armour upgrade on either side of my sort of initial formation here, so they're going to be good for trying to zone out cavalry, which Umbar do have. Some Pelargir Marines, so some javelins just for some support as well, going to be useful at doing some damage. Some Guards of Osgiliath, which in a siege, as long as they can avoid getting shot up by arrows, are going to be incredibly useful, because Umbar don't really have an equivalent. Well, they do in the Naru Sentinels, but I didn't see any Naru Sentinels on my side of the battlefield, spoilers. So if I can get them into melee, they should be really strong. But of course Umbar have got plenty of archers at their disposal that they can use to shoot them down, so I'm going to have to be quite careful with how I choose to use them. And then 3 units of Gondor infantry at the back, 2 with just the first level of armour upgrades and 1 with both. So a reasonably high tier army, but fairly small considering I'm going to be facing down an entire wing of Umbar. I will have a bit of support however coming in from, excuse me, losing my voice already, that's a good start. From Engsfitz, who's going to be playing as Dol Amroth. He's got some Ethelond Halberdiers, some Tarnostian Spearmen and some Doran Ernil Swordsmen. He's got some cavalry at his disposal as well, so he'll be the fast moving support for the Gondorian army. He's got some Tirithea Lancers, which are going to be able to move around pretty quickly. A Trebuchet with a very small crew, it must be said. And then over here on the main road, he's going to wait a little bit I think before he moves in, but he's got some Doran Ernil Swordsmen. He's got some Belfalas Marines, very much the same sort of thing as the Pelargir. He's got some fully upgraded Ethelond Man-at-Arms, some upgraded Doran Ernil Pikemen, some Mighty Haven Guard, and some scary Perithil Champions. And I think he's got some other units of cavalry as well hidden in the trees back there, including some Haven Knights. Then we have Darkwall 44, who's got some Gondor militia infantry, playing very much in his natural habitat as Gondor. Some Pelargir Marines. He's got, I think, well, obviously he's going to have more units at his disposal out here as he marches towards the settlement. Some Gondor Spearmen with the armour upgrades. He's got some Trebuchet, he's got some Citadel Guard, he's got some Nimlothian Honour Guard, obviously a unit that I very much approve of. Gondor Spearmen upgraded again, Gondor Militia Infantry, some Gondor Infantry with just the first level of armour upgrades. He too has got some Fountain Guard, some Guards of Osgiliath either side of just a single unit Fountain Guard, that is, just like me. Raven Helms and Axemen of Lasarnak, Gondor Archers, Marksmen, Gondor Archers. So yeah, overall, in terms of certainly a force outside, it's more numerous and actually more elite than my own. And he's also going to have some direct support from an ally right next to him in Mevon, who has got most of his units over there. Engsfitz has actually got some of his Dol Amroth forces over here as well. Some Doran Ernil Pikes, some Dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan, some Black Swan Renegades over there. And just in behind Mevon's units on the road, some Gondor Infantry, Gondor Spearmen with the first level of armour upgrades. A couple of units of Axemen of Lasarnak. The AP will be useful against Umbar, as will the AP from the Citadel Guard. The Vanguard of King Elisar, so this is a scenario, so some units that we don't see in the standard roster do make a triumphant return, and the Vanguard of King Elisar are one such unit. He's got some Pinnith Galen cavalry in behind all of his polearm units as well, so another unit of fast movers, with the armour upgrade actually as well, so they'll be a little bit more resilient. And another wing over here of Gondor Militia Archers, Gondor Militia Infantry, Spears, some Pelargir Marines back here, and some Ithilien Rangers. So Rangers, obviously, very small unit of Rangers actually, with only 70 men in the unit, but we know how dangerous Rangers can be. And actually this is where the rest of the Dol Amroth cavalry is, here in these farmlands over here. Some Haven Knights and 2 units of Knights of the Silver Swan, so some pretty effective heavy cavalry there, both Lancers and melee Knights. Now, we shall move on to my opponent over here, who's going to have to try and stop me from releasing most of my army. We have Simp of the Dim Cloud, which is of course blindness. And rather like me, who has got probably the lowest tier attacking army, he's probably got the lowest tier defending army as well. which makes a certain amount of sense as we face off against one another. He too has got some units which we don't see in the standard rosters anymore, so some Corsairs, obviously unshielded, pretty poor in melee, but highly numerous. Same sort of thing in behind, he's got some Corsair pikemen, which we don't see anymore, but a very numerous unit of pikes. Again, very vulnerable to arrow fire though, but I've only got 2 units of archers, so I do need to be careful with how I use them. Some Belagai footmen, some Adunheim shield guard, who are fantastic at holding a line, of course, and surrounded by all these Corsairs, they should be even better at that. And then the Corsair savages and the upgraded Balakith axe guard should add some much needed AP damage to the mix as well. So overall, he's got some tools here that he can most certainly use, in addition to the Naruna Aru Royal Guard that he has over here as an archer unit. Just the one archer unit though. He also has some Corsair fencers around somewhere, but I think they can hide anywhere, so that's another unit of potentially ranged damage that he can deploy. Then we have Inarius, who's got some units guarding my prisoners. He's got some Belagai pikemen, some Balakith shield bearers, in addition to some more shield bearers and some Corsair infantry up here on the side with the armour upgrades. Then over here on this wall he's got some Belagai archers. I'm going to try and avoid going as close to this wall as I can so that I'm not getting shot from the side as I try and advance down there towards the what can only be described as a rock lighthouse over there. Interesting terrain feature that isn't actually going to see much use in this battle, but it's nice to see it there. Belagai footmen on the front lines, some Corsair infantry are there also. We have some Alcarondas legions, some Corsairs, we've got some Narun Aru Royal Guard just in behind, some more Alcarondas legion Belagai pikes, and a trebuchet and some harbingers up on the high ground in the centre of town. He's also got some savages actually still in Anarius' army and some Corsairs. Now then, we have another Umbar army over here, played by Waffles. He's got some blackguards, he's got some Alcarondas legion on the front. The rest of his army significantly further back. We'll see how he uses them. He's got the Adunheim Lancers, obviously a really strong unit of Lance Cavalry. Lance Cavalry they are though, they're going to want to avoid the Haven Knights. Corsair Savages, Narun Aru Royal Guard, Narun Aru Sentinels. So they do have some Sentinels, but they're obviously going to deploy on the front rather than against me. Some Savages, some Balakith Marksmen, some more Belagai Pikes, Belagai Footmen. And back here we have Eclipse's army. Obviously he was the host of this particular battle. He didn't make this map, as he was as he pointed out at the start, but yeah, a Adunheim Shield Guard, some Balakith Axe Guard, several units of Alcarondas Legion as well. So you can see over here, obviously some high quality units, some more Narun Aru Sentinels actually from Waffles, some Belagai Archers up there as well, Adunheim Shield Guard, Blackguards, Shield Guard, some Shield Bearers, and actually a very healthy amount of cavalry over here as well. 2 units of Adunheim Lancers and a unit of Warlords of Umbar getting ready to face off against old Amroth. But without further ado, let's begin. So a reasonably long siege battle this, and early on obviously the frames do their classic drop, but they'll stabilise soon enough. And it is an interesting one this, because again it's not quite a cut and dry siege. The whole dynamic with the prisoners over here, the lower end armies that are over on this side of things certainly are going to be sort of battling for this. Also I have to cross a bridge in order to get into the settlement as well, which is maybe a little bit more awkward than it would otherwise be. Here there you can see the trebuchet crew, oof, and that is a most unfortunate hit there on Inarius' trebuchet. He needs to get it out of there quickly as Engsvitz immediately opens up and gets a very nice hit. Worthwhile as well, if we can disable that trebuchet, it takes away a huge weapon that Umbar potentially have, especially later on if they conserve their ammo and we don't have many answers to it, we might be at its mercy. So the fact that he is able to get some good hits on it there, very, very nice indeed. Oof. Again, the crumbling buildings always do wonders for the frame rate. It looks neat, but even turning off the particle effects is not sufficient for salvaging my frames. Meanwhile, over here you can see Blindness is going to be forming up his army to meet my advance, but he's not going to be doing it with everything. He is going to be falling some of his units back, including his Alcarondas Legion. A lot of his stronger units he's actually going to pull back, which is fair play, because otherwise I would be trying to go after them with archers, so something like these Balakith Axe Guard would be a good target for my Kaerandros Marksmen. So definitely understandable why he's pulling back there. But what I am going to do is actually I am going to target all of these Corsairs. I mean, the Corsairs and the Corsair Pikemen are not the most dangerous units in melee, but they're so vulnerable to arrows that it's going to be worth my time to at least expend a decent chunk of my ammo in weakening them, because it will make my passage through the more open areas of this map just a little bit easier. At least that's the idea. Tiratea Lancers are over there. Meanwhile, you can see here Engsvitz is also moving forward, taking point with his Dol Amroth forces, as Mevin is going to follow him in. As Umbar also ready themselves for the joint Dol Amroth Gondorian advance over here. So these choke points obviously fairly wide actually. But this is very much going to be the sort of fight that Umbar is going to quite enjoy, because obviously infantry, this sort of engagement, exactly the sort of thing they are often very, very effective at. Balakith marksmen getting hold of the hills, as are the Corsair crossbows. They want to be a little bit careful of exposing themselves. Obviously they can hide anywhere, which means they can sort of wait their time, but again, it could be quite risky to deploy the Corsairs quite that early. Tirithea Lancers just in time to see a charge. They get their Lancers down. I mean, they are charging into spears. They actually do pull out before a lot of the cavalry actually does connect with the army there. By the time they actually hit, they may as well have just followed through with the charge, because they would have at least done a little bit more damage. But in the end, it's not the end of the world, really. Engsfitz is just going to pull his Tirithea Lancers back. You can see, yeah, the Gondor Militia Archers starting to fire. Obviously, even Militia Archers going to be able to do a good amount of damage to all of these Corsairs, trying to soften up the line for the main advance. Because I do have to do this, really. Even though Blindness has only got a section of his army out here, it is in my interest to try and take this as carefully as possible, because I just don't have the numbers at my disposal to be too gung-ho, because of course a big section of my army is within the settlement. So one wrong move and I could be in all sorts of trouble without the strength left to me to cross the bridge, which is going to be the main challenge here. So I'm going to need to try and take this as efficiently as I possibly can going into this section of the field. Meanwhile, Dol Amroth and Gondor trying to form up. You can see over here they're actually taking a hefty amount of damage here from the Corsair crossbows, and they're kind of tripping over each other trying to sort of get out of range of those crossbows. So a little bit of disorganisation there, but it's not the end of the world. Peneth Galen cavalry is still here. They're sort of scrambling for some cover as well, or at least they should be. Corsair crossbows now idle, but a good amount of pikes dead there, a good amount of Black Swan renegades dead there as well. Unfortunate to say the least, but they will have plenty of time to organise themselves and push forward. Also, I mean, these Corsairs are very exposed, so a unit of archers coming forward would be enough to make them think twice about that. Man, those bolts there jerked in the other direction, going after the cavalry. A few of the Peneth Galen there falling by the wayside. Some Castamir's Rangers as well, obviously definitely a unit we want to be on the lookout for. Very, very dangerous potentially. Some cavalry heading out wide in wedge formation here from Eclipse. The Adunheim Lancers by the shoreline, or at least by the river mouth, I should say, the estuary that leads out into the ocean. Wedge looks cool, but like I said, it hasn't really had much of a tangible impact on many battles. But it's nice to see nonetheless. Gondor Militia Archers still fine. So you can see as I slowly push forward, this is going to encourage Blindness to pull back to an easier to control section of the environment. I was actually pushing up some of my javelins to get up onto the high ground here, which may be why he decided to pull back just a little bit. But I don't really want to waste my javelins on Corsairs anyway. I will use my arrows, but I don't want to use my javelins on just standard Corsairs. He has got some Savages out here for some AP, and he's got some Belagaya for some slightly more sturdy units. Some Belagaya footmen heading over there, but yeah, at the moment, you can see the Adunheim Lancers are on the way over, sort of harrying my back lines. But I have got some Gondor Spearmen heading that way. Engsfitz has also still got his Tirithea Lancers, which they may not be in the same level as the Adunheim, but he's also got some of his Hayden Knights over here now as well. So there's no immediate danger from Waffles' cavalry, and all of my Pikes and Fountain Guard are also at the back of my army, because I don't want to send them in first to get shot up by any Umbar archers that may creep their way forwards. For the time being, still just skirmishing with the enemy. Slowly pushing Blindness back, trying to get into a good position to get a nice engagement. But now, Mavin is moving forward. His Gondor Spearmen are actually shaken, presumably because they took some point-blank volleys from the Corsair Blackguards. Meanwhile, that's a brilliant shot from the Trebuchet as well, right into the Naruna Aru Roar Guard. Worthwhile unit to go after. They may still have all of their ammunition, but they're strong enough in melee that it's definitely a good target to try and take on. Corsair Savages are here, getting towards the front line. They should be decent in melee, actually, against Gondor. Obviously, they've got the armour upgrade as well. Been a while since we've seen the Savages, but they are ultimately still a cheap, lower-end heavy axeman, so their staying power is going to be very limited even with the armour upgrade. But they should be able to lay down at least some damage against these Gondorians that are in the vanguard. Gondor infantry fighting hard. Some Pelargir Marines that have taken a ton of damage already. That was the sound of one of the special abilities being used. It was actually one of the Gondorian special abilities, so I'd imagine it was Mevin to try and bolster his defences as he starts his attack. Dol Amroth also moving in to add some reinforcements. Athlon Man-at-Arms moving in. Very similar to the Gondor infantry, of course, because especially with just the one armour upgrade. Gondor infantry can be upgraded twice, of course, but that's not the case here. Alcarondas Legion, though superior, but the numbers coming in here are pretty significant at this stage. Meanwhile, with the Corsairs sufficiently softened up at this point, I'm going to start moving in. Gondor Militia Archers are out of ammunition at this point, but chances are they wouldn't have done much damage to anything else anyway. So we're going to start moving in, and we're going to start to try and break through this as efficiently as we possibly can. You can see there the Corsair Savages charging into the Gondor Militia Archers, but they're going to absorb the charge, and then the Spears are going to come in to back them up. It's still not an ideal engagement, but that's more just blindness with some good identification of the targets there. But as I start moving in, as I start shifting my pikes to the front line, I noticed, much to my horror, that there was some Adunheim Lancers coming in from behind. I actually didn't know that Dol Amroth had waved their cavalry off to a different section of the battlefield. Otherwise I probably would have waited for some support from the cavalry to come in to make sure this sort of thing couldn't happen. But this is a real problem for me now, because again, I don't have the numbers really to take too many broadside charges from a unit as strong as the Adunheim Lancers. Now fortunately for me, he's going after the archers first and foremost, which puts them dangerously close to my Fountain Guard. Unfortunately, I only end up getting one of them down in the end. He's also going to go after my Pelargia Marines. I do manage to get some javelins off, but most of them actually end up missing. A real problem for me at this point. Now they're going to start charging into the rear lines here. A good charge there onto my Gondor infantry. What was shaping up to actually be a very efficient carving through of all of these Corsairs is turning into a pretty hairy situation for me. But Marksmen of Caer Andros are going to be shooting them every chance they get, as are the Pelargia Marines as soon as they reform after getting battered. I'm going to turn around with my Gondor Spearmen, but I mean, you can see the Adunheim Lancers are taking losses, but I'm taking far more losses at the hands of their chargers. In the older builds of the game, the Adunheim Lancers would already have broken, but the improved morale of Lancers now does change that somewhat. My Fountain Guard are continuing to try and chase them down. They are taking losses, but the armour is certainly helping them. Over here, meanwhile, still a very robust frontline fight. You can see over here, actually, there is some cavalry engagements happening in the backfield, which is probably where Engswitz's attentions really lay, because he's trying to deal with Eclipse's cavalry, in addition to Mevin's Pinneth Galen also giving him a hand. Obviously, the Adunheim Lancers are going to really struggle at the hands of the Haven Knights. Those are Knights of the Silver Swan, actually. Again, there's a lot of forces from Mevin going here the long way around as well. A small detachment to try and give another angle to our assault. Trebuchet is over there as well. But yeah, this is where obviously the Dol Amroth cavalry was preoccupied, and that is where the damage is being done to me. The Adunheim Lancers are still there, but I mean, fortunately for me, there was one section of line where the charge did effectively split my formation, where the infantry were, and the Corsair Savages did start spilling through. But I'm starting to shoot them, and the Corsair Savages won't last too much longer. But fortunately for me, this section of line over here now, where I'm starting to push through, there isn't really much left of the Corsairs at all. So I am going to be victorious still. I'm going to be able to push through. I'm going to be able to wrap up the line. And then you can see the Lancers at this point are waving off, because they don't have the numbers really to stick around and keep taking shots from the Caer Andros marksmen anymore. Guards of Osgiliath still in good enough health. The unit that's over here, I think, was the one that took some damage. Indeed it was, which is unfortunate. Like I said, not quite as smooth as I was hoping, considering my reduced numbers, but in the end, not bad at all, really. I was really worried when those Adunheim Lancers came screaming in there. I think actually if he had gone in for an initial charge on my back lines, more so than going after my archers and javelins, it could have actually been worse for me than it was. Because part of the problem going forward is I'm going to need as much infantry as I can, as much numbers as I can, to get across that bridge. Otherwise it could end up being pretty difficult for me. But victory, the Corsairs have been wiped away, and now I can reorganise myself and get ready for what is going to be, ultimately, I'm not going to chase down the Belagar footmen. Another special ability coming in, that's not from me, that I would assume is over here from maybe Dark Wolf. As they continue to push in, you can see over here that wave after wave coming in. Ravenhelm's on the front line now. There's some Dorian Ernil pikes from Dol Amroth, a lot of the heavy infantry from Gondor. Both sides really going at one another hammer and tongs over here. It's kind of difficult to tell actually who's getting the upper hand in this particular fight. Some Athelian Rangers firing in there, which will definitely help the Gondorian cause. Trebuchet going in there, trying to go after the Trebuchet, and they do get it. That's really unfortunate for Inarius. He's lost both of his Trebuchet pieces at the hands of Engsvitz here. But, I mean, we've used up most of our ammo to do that, but that does take away a huge weapon that they could have in the late game against us. And it does also keep this front line a little bit more safe than it otherwise would have been. But Militia Infantry is going to struggle against Corsair Blackguard, so not a good situation for them. In come the Trebuchet crew now. And they're the telltale rip of Ranger arrows as they go through the front line. Balagar archers getting up onto the walls as well. What's going on over here? So yeah, Mevin continuing to go out wide. There's a little section of units over here on this little line. I think these actually, now that I consider it, they're supposed to be boats, aren't they? I thought these were just little islands, but these towers, the walls that are floating in midair and going off the front, it's supposed to be a ship. I mean, it's a creative way of doing it, I suppose. Corsairs. Corsair infantry firing away. Shooting into the forces of Mevin as they get out here. There's some Knights of the Silver Swan over there as well, giving him a little bit of support. Getting through Waffles' pretty thick front line over there is going to be fairly difficult, to be honest. Gondor Militia Infantry going to head over there as well. Corsair Infantry with the armour upgrade, maybe that's probably just about superior to the Gondor Militia. I mean, yeah, the bows are really what gives them that extra bit of utility, more so than their abilities in melee. Umbar definitely have some stronger units to commit in melee. Meanwhile, this fight on the front line, again, we'll really see over time who's really gaining the upper hand here, but really ripping into one another pretty hard here, the Gondorians and the forces from Umbar. Most of the Dol Amroth units at this point have depleted themselves, but another unit is now coming forward. Some dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan as well. Strong. That is where Imrahil is as well. I think I can see him in there. Indeed it is. Again, odd place for the general to be, considering the presence of the Haven Knights and the Haven Guard. See there the Tirithay Lancers. There's still some annoyances flitting around back here in the south of the map. The Adunheim Lancers getting chased off still by Dol Amroth Cavalry. But Engsvitz has done a pretty good job of that. Like, really, I'm the only one that has really borne the brunt of any serious cavalry damage, outside of our own cavalry getting damaged by sort of obviously just getting into melee with other units. There hasn't really been a major impact from the Umbar cavalry, so that's good. Meanwhile, going to start crossing the bridge now. Medieval 2's bridge pathfinding is obviously always a treat to behold, but getting some of my fully upgraded Gondor infantry in the front, because they'll be the best at taking arrow fire, which definitely the Nirina Iron Royal Guard and Balagar archers will be providing towards me. Wardens of the White Tower are also going to go in. Obviously they can be used a little bit more freely, multiple HP, heavily armoured and shielded. They're going to be able to take a bit of a beating here. But I'm going to need a decent amount of troops to get through here, because all of Blindness's best units were retreated, really. Not the Balagar footmen so much, but Adunheim Shield Guard are going to be really effective at holding the line in this particular situation. And also he's got his more dangerous armour-piercing units that he retreated as well in the Balakith Axe Guard. So that's going to be a bit of a problem for me. And also, obviously, the ranged advantage is going to be very heavily favouring the defenders here, because I still have my marksmen which are firing across the river, because I can't really do much else at this point. All I can hope to do is try and absorb as much ammo as I can, but I want to try and take as much focus off the units that are crossing the bridge as I possibly can. There's some units that are actually still sort of stuck on the bridge, but again, we'll leave this section of the battle for now, because this is where the units are not really sure how to interact with the bridge, but they do sort of get over that in time. Corsairs moving in, so again, just numbers for Umbar being ploughed in. There's actually a gap here in the middle of this line. The Trebuchet crew, I think, is going to try and plug that as more reinforcements are ready to come in should the need arise. Gondor infantry there. I mean, the Knights of the Silver Swan are going to be strong, but there is a lot of AP on the front line from the Corsair Savages. So that could be a bit of a concern. Meanwhile, leaving the bridge now. Corsair savages revealing themselves, so there was actually a much more significant presence on that ship than there could otherwise have been. There's still a Dunheim Lancers back there as well, and actually now there is a bit of cavalry pressure coming in to Mevon's units, and those Dunheim Lancers are going to be able to get into those Gondor Militia Archers and do a ton of damage to them. Unfortunate for him, still some Warlords as well. I mean, there's only 5 of them, but Knights are a whole different proposition to regular cavalry. And those Militia Archers who were hoping to just sort of skirmish freely are not going to have that luxury. And with the flanking force coming forward from Waffles as well, I mean, there's still the Haven Knights over here getting a point-blank charge. That wasn't really the most devastating one. They don't want to stay there for too long either, because heavy axemen are good against cavalry and sustained melee, so they're going to want to get out of there. Gondor Militia Infantry are holding back the tide. They're going to need some reinforcements heading over there, and oof, again, rear charge. This is some good cavalry play. Catching Mevon off balance, really, and Umbar doing a good job there. Fortunately, though, Mevon does have some more units. He does have some Gondor Spearmen, he does have some Axemen of the Sarnak, but through sheer numbers and with the cavalry support, especially considering the routing of that militia infantry there, this is a good flank this from the Umbar forces, and they can spread out a little bit more as well. There's another unit of Axemen of the Sarnak here. The presence of Dol Amroth's cavalry is going to be key here. They're going to need the support here, Gondor, I think. If for nothing else than to keep this, albeit depleted cavalry off their backs. Axemen of the Sarnak, of course, significantly stronger than Savages. The Gondor Militia Archers have returned right on the red line as well. It's probably fortunate actually the water was there. Otherwise they could have continued to rout. It would be really unfortunate if they routed off here, because there's really nowhere for them to go. You'd have to sort of imagine that they just sort of jump into the river to try and swim across to the other side. I can say that in an estuary like that, that is a terrible idea. But Gondor Spearmen flanking around as well. Yeah, the cavalry over here now, they're not going to be able to come to the aid of their units. They could get some Dunheim Shield Guard out here. Again, on the front foot this, Umbar, which is good to see. But with this Dol Amroth cavalry, they have now got this force from the boats bottled up. There's some fencers though as well, so Waffles continuing to pull out more and more tricks over here. But I think it's going to come to its end pretty soon. I mean, some Tirathea Lancers, they're going to get their Lancers down there. Oof, point blank throwing of those daggers though. Cutting through there. But yeah, Waffle's going to continue to come out, try and help out. The Knights of the Silver Swan are moving in as well though, which is going to be a bit of an issue for them. I think he's going to do more damage than I would have thought, but I think we're still going to be fine as attackers. Meanwhile, yeah, you can see over here, this section in the middle that was looking a little bit ropey, the Gondor infantry have now exploited that. So while the defenders are doing pretty well, there goes one of the Umbar bonuses. And there goes a Gondor bonus as well. I think that was actually me, because I was taking a fair amount of damage from the side from those Narin Arrow Royal Guard. So I flicked my arrow resilience up to try and make sure that they don't do as much damage as they otherwise could. You can see over here, it's going to be a long slog for me to get through this bridge, because while I should do it in the end, marksman coming forward, Pelagia Marines also on the way in, and they're going to be able to throw their jabbies in to the Narin Arrow Royal Guard. I mean, at this point I might as well, like, either they go after the Pelagia Marines, which means they're not going after my infantry, which means I'll win the front line, or they don't go after my Pelagia Marines and get showered with javelins and get most of their unit destroyed. Kind of a win-win for me at this point, or at least not as much of an L as I could take. You can see my prisoners still under lock and key, but the time is getting closer to the point where I can actually think about using them. Also, another front opening up over here with Engsvitz moving in with the rest of his army over here to put some pressure on Inarius. I don't think he's actually going to win this, because Inarius has got a lot of units in reserve, but at the very least we're putting pressure on multiple fronts at this point, which is going to be difficult on the defenders. There goes another Umbar bonus. That could be Inarius. I mean, it could conceivably be any of them at this point, because they're all under pressure from us as we move forward as attackers. Javelins coming in there doing some good damage. It's really over here where we have made some good ground, but actually kind of overextending ourselves a little bit now. More of these reinforcements need to be far closer to the settlement, I think, because Umbar have managed to get their reinforcements in, and now our exhausted attack over here really is probably going to get cleaned up, which is bad news for us. Bad news bears. as if that wasn't enough, over here, the Gondorian line, as it was, has actually retreated from Mevin. He's decided that he doesn't want to continue to contest this over here anymore because it's just not working out all that well for him. Fortunately for us, it's still going to we're still going to be able to charge in and do some damage to Waffles' Corsairs. Back from a raid on Gondor, I'm sure. Yeah, these Knights of the Silver Swan going to do some damage, but the presence of the Adunheim Shield Guard just makes it very difficult for Dol Amroth's cavalry to be used to maximum effectiveness. Could charge into those savages. Are they going after the fences, I wonder? Well, that wasn't really a charge, it just sort of wandered into melee there, but they're going to do some damage nonetheless, I think. Well, it's an interesting tactic. Let's see over here. And now an Iroh Guard continuing to fight, or fire I should say, on the front line. I've got a few units in there. I've got some Guards of Osgiliath towards the front. I've got my Wards of the White Tower, as well as some infantry and spearmen. It's a really slow process, but this bridge should fall in the end. There goes another boost for one of the Gondorian armies. Could be Dol Amroth as well, of course. Athlon men-at-arms are there. The Trebuchet crew is there. Doing a good job, actually, on the front line, Dol Amroth. I mean, in comparison to Umbar and Gondor, their infantry is maybe not quite as highly thought of, but they definitely still have some good units, and obviously especially the Haven Guard, who are going to be able to carve their way through Belagaya there. Only one Umbar soldier ends up dying to that Trebuchet volley. Balakith marksmen, are they firing in? They are, as well as the Belagaya archers. I'm actually quite pleased that Enkspitz moved in at this point, because it could have been that Inarius sent those archers over to shoot me as I crossed the bridge, and like fish in a barrel, even my armour and arrow resilience probably wouldn't have saved me from saturation of fire to that extent. So it's definitely to our credit here that Dol Amroth have moved forward. Doran Ernil swordsman in the back, Athlon halberdiers, still the Trebuchet crew, but a very limited manpower supply that he has at his disposal there. Meanwhile, we have got some Gondor spearmen fighting on the front line, Palagir Marines, marksmen of Caer Andros, so we may actually be losing the ground we gained, but javelins firing point blank there into the Alcarondas Legion, doing some good damage. But some more infantry is going to be required, I think, in order to make our gains stick. Balakith Axguard victory seems certain. These Gondor spears are fighting hard, but they're ultimately deep within enemy territory at this point, and they could end up being surrounded. That would expose the backs of the Alcarondas Legion to arrow fire, though, so I wouldn't actually recommend it. Actually, that is a different Trebuchet, isn't it? A Gondorian Trebuchet. Firing in, getting some half-decent hits, I suppose. Umbar now, though, pulling back within their defensive lines. These Knights of the Silver Swan find themselves caught by the Adunheim Shield Guard, by the Balakith Shield Bearers. So really not much of the Dol Amroth force left at this stage. You can see there the Corsair Fencers moving into a very deadly looking position to shoot into my flank. There goes the Dol Amroth General, shanked by a bunch of filthy pirates. But you can see here, like, they do get some hits, but a few of those daggers also find their way into the bridge itself, which obviously, again, it's another example of Medieval 2 jank, really. Because I do think Blindness should have been able to do more damage to me in that situation than he ultimately ended up doing. But it's good news for me, ultimately, because not very many of my men actually end up dying to what could have been very, very dangerous volleys of throwing knives. And more of my men are sort of getting ready. Guards of Osgiliath, I mean, I also noticed the Naran Iroh Guard were out of ammo, so my healthier unit of Guards of Osgiliath are going to push forward and get ready to add themselves to the front line. Over here on the front line, over here, meanwhile, more infantry moving forward. Fountain Guard as well, exactly the sort of thing that we're going to need, because we are sort of losing ground. We have been pushed back outside the settlement once again, but we're able to use a lot of our ranged power as well to do some good damage. Meanwhile, pretty much all of the Dol Amroth cavalry has been thrown backwards, so this assault over here has ultimately ended in failure for us as attackers. We did some damage, but not near enough to really make it worthwhile, I don't think. And this Dol Amroth push over here as well is actually going okay for the time being. Haven Guard have pulled back a little bit. Trebuchet getting closer to the line. The Haven Guard are now going to go back in to support the Parathil champions, along with a wave of Doran Ernil swordsmen. It'll at least act as a decent meat shield for the Haven Guard, and they won't do too badly against the Corsair infantry, I suppose. They won't be outclassed to the same extent that the Alcarondas Legion outclassed them. grazing hit there on the Balaguer archers, but it's better than killing nothing at all. Meanwhile, these Adunheim Shield Guard continuing to fight really hard on the front line. At this point, I could maybe try and push through, but it's not really worth my while because I'm going to win this fight more efficiently if I just wait and bide my time. And as long as there's no archers on the way over here to put more pressure on me, I can afford to take my time. And looking at the other sections of the battlefield, it's not imperative I start making gains super quickly. And if it is, I can activate my prisoners. Meanwhile, Doran sorted. You can see now that on the sides of this engagement, the Alcarondas Legion is starting to have the desired effect. But Engsfit still has another answer to that. He can send in his Athlon Halberdiers. Their armour piercing should prove to be very, very useful indeed against that kind of opponent. Not quickly enough to save those Tarnostian spearmen from routing though. Every man is going to count on this front line because of course the longer Engsfit keeps this assault going, the less is going to head over towards my section of the field and over towards the centre here, where we're seeing like another form up of this front line over here. Oof, again, more real good hits there from the Trebuchet of Dark Wolf. Haven Knights are still over here. Nimlothian Honour Guard yet to be committed, but Gondor Archers are in there. Axemen of Lasarnak. So this fight over here has really been a bit back and forth, but we're back really to where we started in that engagement. Rotting meat is being flung in. It's unlikely to rout Umbar. That's also something else that Umbar's bonus gives them. It also makes them unbreakable for that period of time, which is probably the most significant part of that, to be honest with you. But even without that, Umbar's morale overall is pretty decent. Better, I would say, than Gondor's. And Rotting Meat, I mean, Corsair Crossmen are routing, but you know they're on the front line against, like, Corsairs are obviously the exception to that rule. But Doran Pikemen pushing in with the Halberdiers. They have managed to sort of reverse the tide a little bit against the Alcarondas Legion, but they're getting shot in the side now by the Castamir's Rangers, which is going to spell disaster for Engsfit. He's done a good job up till now, but I'm not sure how much longer he's going to be able to withstand Ranger fire like that. Meanwhile, over here, slowly and surely, the Adunheim Shield Guard are being worn down. It's over here, it's still just one unit of Alcarondas Legion. We're getting closer to the time now where the prison break is going to happen. And you can see, actually, I think I announced this in voice chat. I was like, how about this? How about I spring the prison break now? Because it'll make things more interesting, and indeed I do. Everyone agreed. And now, the prison riot begins. Not a lot of high quality units back here, though, you have to remember. Stuff like Alcarondas Legion, Corsair Fencers, and upgraded Balakath Guard are going to be far superior to these units over here. But now, what's left of Blindness's army is going to have its attention split. And now, there is a little bit of a ticking clock for me to work with. So if I can push through there quickly, things should be good. But obviously you can see there, Corsair Fencers getting in there. I do have the Bandits as well, which are Javelins. I mean, they're not the best Javelins by any means. I think that was my bonus as well that I just activated to sort of give myself a little bit of resilience. They might not be the best Javelins, but they're still going to really help me in my efforts to try and break free of this prison camp. Oof. You can actually see there, a bit unfortunate there for Engsfit, because that Rotting Meat is probably going to have more of a toll on his men than it is on Umbar at this point, but he did get some good damage done. He's still fighting hard. Still, those Castamir's Rangers, though, have really been the nail in the coffin, I would say, for Engsfit. And the best he can hope for at this point is just to keep that assault going for as long as possible. Because down here in the middle, we are now gaining a bigger advantage. Adunheim Shield Guard defeat seems certain. Only a military genius could win this battle. The numbers that are coming forward now, from Dark Wolf's army in particular, going to be too much for Umbar to deal with. A lot of these units are archers that at this point don't really have anything to cover them, and the Nimlothian Honour Guard are charging forward. And the Fencers probably wouldn't do too badly against the Honour Guard. They'd lose, but with a bit of support you could take down a fair few of them. Now they're going to retreat back to the hill in the middle. You could either retreat back to the island at the back with the two bridges that lead across to it, or the hill in the middle. The defenders are going to choose to go to the central hill. Meanwhile, Dol Amroth actually doing pretty decently here. Paradil Champion's still alive. A fear-causing unit as well. So again, morale debuffing taking place. Meanwhile, the prison break, you can actually see how much momentum the prison break had. But with Naran Iron Guard, Alcarondas Legion, Corsair Fencers, my general himself is actually in danger as well, because I'm going to be committing him forward soon. Bandits are over there. You can see, continuing to try and push in. Some Balakath Guard are over here, trying to push through the Adunheim Shield Guard. But you can see here the glories of Medieval 2 bridge pathfinding once again, because I'm trying to get them to charge in as quickly as possible, but they seem to take that to me charge into the railing. So I'm going to have to sort of piece by piece get my army across the bridge and sort of path it over here and then over there. The glories of trying to command your army across the bridge. But Fountain Guard are on the way across, Gondor Spearmen are on their way across. So now over here in this section of the city, a decent amount of pressure is going to be put onto the defenders now. And especially considering the fact that we're being victorious over here in the middle as well, all of a sudden things aren't looking too bad for us. Things were looking pretty grim at one point when we lost the flank, but not too bad now. The defenders are going to retreat to a better position, however, which we will have to deal with in turn. Defeat seems certain for the Balakath marksman. Balakath, I should say. Unsurprising, considering Dol Amroth still have a decent amount of troops there. What have we here? We still have some cavalry flitting around, actually, from Engsvitz. Haven Guard, all on their lonesome back here, but they are actually in and amongst the Balagaya pikemen, so they will actually get a few kills before they fall by the wayside. Harbingers of Casimir over there, obviously a similar unit, but they're fully healthy in comparison to the Haven Guard, so that's going to be that for them. How long can Dol Amroth cling on for? We shall see. Meanwhile, now I've managed to get my army across, and now we can start doing things a little bit more properly. There's still the matter of Balakath Guard and Shield Bearers, obviously a lot of AP on the front, which is going to be bad for my standard units, but the difference here is going to be the fact that I have Guards of Osgiliath, Fountain Guard and Wardens of the White Tower backing up a lot of numbers. So it's only a matter of time, really, before this victory for Umbar, as it says, flicks back in the other direction. Haven Knight's going to charge in there. Going to start doing some damage to the Balakath Guard. Yeah, this prison break is also going to be successful, so it's really just a matter of how much blindness can take down of my army before he's ultimately overwhelmed. That could make a pretty big difference as we move into the final phases of this fight. Meanwhile, Engsvitz still under a bit of pressure. Balagaya pikemen. Still some shield bearers back there as well. I mean, at this point, yeah, Dol Amroth's army is looking very thin on the ground. I mean, he's done his best here, Engsvitz, and he did technically break through, but he hasn't really had the numbers to his army, because a section of his army, of course, was made up with cavalry, just like a section of my army was within the settlement from the start and had to be rescued. So we didn't have quite the same number of infantry units available to us as Eclipse and Mevin did, and that's going to be the end of Engsvitz. So Dol Amroth have fallen, but was their sacrifice in vain? We shall see. Meanwhile, back over here, the Gondorians surrounding individual pockets of resistance from Umbar that are still in the lower reaches of the settlement, as Mevin and Darkwolf start to form their Gondorian armies up. They probably shouldn't hang out in the path of Naran Iron Guard shooting them. I mean, it is only militia archers, I suppose, but so a bit of ammunition being expended is not necessarily the worst thing. But now, really, the only part of the outer defences that are still ongoing is Blindness's army, dealing with the unruly prisoners, and of course the front line as it still is. I've actually still got a unit of Gondor Spearmen that are still stuck on the bridge, which is most unfortunate. But yeah, like with a unit like the Fountain Guard over here, it's all going to be over, and you can see that now, starting to push through, trying to get towards the position where the prisoners are so I can start supporting them as the Umbar front line starts to fall apart over here. As we flood forth. Gondor Spearmen now deciding that the time is right. There goes one of the Gondorian generals, run through by an axe. That actually was my general. So yeah, it was actually something that did happen in the battle. Like, 2 generals fell at exactly the same time, one of the other Gondorian generals and my general, so he perished in getting out of that prison camp. I did actually say that during the battle, like, how about I launch the prison break now, and if my general dies I admit defeat. But in the end, they told me not to admit defeat, because my general died, which is probably for the best, because it is actually a very even fight. If we have a look over here, we are at this point 8% ahead, but we have no real ranged firepower at this point, whereas the defenders do, and a lot of the defending army is made up of very strong elite troops, whereas my army, quite a fair few of it is like bandits and militia and civilians. Not the kind of units you want to be launching an assault on an Umbar defensive line with, really. And Mevon's army is also pretty depleted at this point. He does have some strong units, obviously, with the vanguard of King Elisar, but really, the most intact army at this stage is Dark Wolf's. And it is going to be quite an ask, really, to get up this this hill. It is an 8% difference. Going to be enough for us to take the hill in the middle of the settlement. We shall have to wait and see. It's a nice little coliseum over here. Umbar would be the sort of people that are into pit fights, I suppose. But now, going to move forward, going to form up my army. I think actually there's still a small matter of some units stuck back here on the bridge. Yeah, there's still a few Gondor spearmen back here. Whether they find their way to the front line or not remains to be seen, but I'm going to try and take cover behind these buildings. Of course, they have a massive height advantage on us at this point. And anything like Castamir's Rangers would definitely be trying to target down something as dangerous as the Fountain Guard, or even the Guards of Osgiliath. A phalanx unit like that in the late game here going to be very, very useful. Bandits. And they have also used up all their ammunition at this point in the prison break, so they only have utility to me now as a unit of light infantry. The Wardens of the White Tower fought hard on the bridge, but there's still a fair few of them left. 22 is not a small number by any means. Citadel Guard, obviously my general, his corpse is back there. We'll have to retrieve that later should we be victorious. Let's see here. So Mevon is going to go around this way to potentially link up with me, with at least a section of his army, to start laying siege to that side of things, whereas Dark Wolf is going to start going around the long way here, around the houses, to start heading up this way as well. Small patch of water there that I hadn't actually noticed before. It is a nice detailed map, this, and now that I know those are supposed to be ships, I don't know if anyone else noticed they were ships and I'm just an idiot and failed to notice that, but yeah. Nice detail to this map. So I commend Captain Gervais for that. It's a shame he wasn't here, because then we maybe would have gotten the rules in a little bit more of a concrete fashion. I think we did pretty well at sort of improvising on the rules, to be honest with you. At least we weren't too far away, I don't think, from what was intended. Unless, of course, you know, if I don't think that set time limits work too well in scenarios like this, because when you're playing, the lag in the frames are such that a set time limit means that it could happen sooner than designed, a prison break, for example. So it could be that my army was still completely across the other side of the bridge when it was like, okay, the prison break is now, the Umbar forces can slaughter them if they want. So I think that ultimately this ended up being better than if that was the case. Well, Mevon's army's still waiting there. Dark Wolf continuing to take the long way around. Slow and steady wins the race, perhaps. This is obviously the lull in proceedings, the first phase of the battle well and truly over. Now, the decisive phase will begin. My army looking a little bit battered and bruised, as is Mevon's, so it's not too surprising that the two of us are going to have to handle things over on this side of things. Corsair fencers from blindness. Gondor infantry on the front who are going to act as a screen if any archers start firing. March for the Andros. Obviously I don't have any Raven Helms, but they fill the role of heavy swordsmen in melee. Gondor spearmen also moving forwards, but yeah, I mean, you can see that my army is not only depleted, but it's made up of a fair few units that maybe not quite so strong. We shall see how it goes, and actually this was where the defenders decide to take matters into their own hands. They can see that at this point, because Dark Wolf is taking such a wide berth around the houses, it's going to take a long time for him to get into position properly. And so they're actually going to have time to flood down off the hill and try and deal with us one by one. Which is the danger of taking too long about certain things, and you know, I may be the one to pay the price for that, because they're going to go after me first and foremost, because I'm right there. There is Mevin over there who can come to my aid potentially, but our armies are the ones that are, you know, not quite as strong as they used to be, so to speak. I'm going to have to try and form up a defensive line. You can see my bandits are actually falling back a little bit, because there is a road around the position, so I wanted to have at least one unit in reserve potentially to try and meet any advance from them. It's going to be hard for me here because they're going to have mass on their side at this point, which means they can bulldoze through me if they so desire, and that is going to be their plan here, I would suggest. Balakith's shield bearers are obviously a little bit further ahead of the curve than most of the other sections of the army. Part of the issue here is I maybe should be sort of front loading everything on the front line rather than sort of waiting and having some units back here ready for a flank. The flank is going to take so long. The main danger is over here from the front. The Balakith shield bearers are taking damage here, but reinforcements are very quickly going to be on the way. And I just don't have the numbers, nor do I have the kind of units to really deal with this effectively. Civilians, militia infantry, what will be bandits, not really the kind of units that you need to push back a huge mass push like this. A lot of Balakith shield bearers bulldozing their way through the front, another unit of Gondor infantry heading there, but it's not going to be enough to stop them, I don't think, especially not with Harbingers heading up around the flank. Yeah. This is a mass push, and I am ill prepared to deal with it. I see what's happening to my front line too late. I thought that the lack of a huge amount of spears on the front line would mean that I could maybe pull my punches a little bit. I was wrong though. The Fountain Guard had kind of come in here. I mean, Umbar will take damage doing this, to be fair. So there's always the case for saying that I'm going to lose effectively. I'm going to be polished off by this fairly efficiently. But if I can kill off enough of Umbar, it leaves the door open for Darkwolf and Mevin to potentially win the game for us. That is the hope. Bandits and the Fountain Guard getting onto the front line now. With the Fountain Guard there, it does change things somewhat. Citadel Guard are over there facing off against the Axe Guard. Mevin is trying to get to me, but again, I think the time for caution is over. Walking is no longer what is called for. Need a bit more sprinting going on. Some Narana Iroh Guard coming down the hill. To be fair as well, Darkwolf is on the way over with some Fountain Guard. Only one unit Fountain Guard as well. I don't like how stretched this army is. For reasons that will become clear in just a moment, it won't actually matter that much. But I don't like the fact that only one unit of Fountain Guard is being committed forward here, and the reinforcements are way too far away. Need to be coming in with a little bit more than that at this point, I think. The Fountain Guard as well. I mean, I do know Shield Guard. There are no pushovers. Gondor Spearmen and Fountain Guard. So now Mevin is going to come over here. And this does mean Umbar are going to have to fight on two fronts, and they haven't managed to completely wipe me away. They've made life very, very tricky for me, certainly. Unfortunately, my bandits are broken and fighting to the death. More and more, it's coming down to what I have left of my Guards of Osgiliath and my Fountain Guard. There's a few units around there in support as well, some Gondor Spears. The enemy general does perish at the hands of my Guards of Osgiliath, which is good. I'm getting my Fountain Guard over here to try and stop this surround, get rid of these Balakith Axe Guard from blindness. Mevin with some reinforcements in from behind, meaning Umbar had to turn around a good amount of their units, which has effectively saved me, at least temporarily. Myself and Mevin at this point are throwing ourselves on the altar of sacrifice. Veterans of Osgiliath are over there as well, preventing these reinforcements from coming down the hill. And at this stage, it has to be Darkwolf. He has to be the hero we need. However, there is a terrible truth to this battle, and that is that while his units are moving at the moment, very soon you will see them stop, stand still, never to move again, because Darkwolf disconnected, unfortunately. Which does affect the outcome of this battle fairly significantly, to be honest with you. It's not one of those situations where the battle's already decided. It's in the balance. This is the critical moment of this battle. At this point, myself and Mevin, like, we're going to lose, basically. But with the damage we do, with the health of Dark Wolf's army, that is the great hope for us at this point. But very shortly, Dark Wolf ends up disconnecting, which means his army is just sitting ducks, really, and Umbar can pick and choose their engagements much, much more easily. We can just say that Dark Wolf's army lost discipline, I suppose. They started trying to loot the settlement before we'd actually dealt with Umbar. But we could still end up winning this, honestly, as the attackers. Even with that, if we can do enough damage to the point where Umbar cannot deal with Dark Wolf's army, even stood still as it is, then maybe not all is lost. Meanwhile, these Fountain Guard, it says defeat seems certain, but that's not really true. These Balakith shield bearers will fall by the wayside. The crossbows were trying to shoot into them, but I did have these depleted guards of Osgiliath get into them to prevent them from firing. Because of course if those crossbows start firing on me, I'm in massive trouble. Naren and Iron Royal Guard are coming in here. These Fountain Guard are just taking names in this fight. Unfortunately, Mevin, his army is also running out of steam. Even with the Vanguard of King Elisar and the Citadel Guard over here, the level of Umbar resistance we're up against at this point, Alcarondas Legion, Harbingers, Naren and Iron Royal Guard, a Dunaim Shield Guard, it's going to be too much for even them to deal with. Veterans of Osgiliath getting charged by the very depleted cavalry. Still trying to fight against the Belagire pikemen, but they're wavering at this point. And try and go into the Alcarondas Legion here. A very messy fight, but I mean, we're doing damage to Umbar, that's the thing. We're really making Umbar bleed for this. Fountain Guard still doing a brilliant job. Over here, Fountain Guard, you can see at this point, Dark Wolf's army stands out a little bit because of how unmoving it is. And his internet, or his game, or his PC has let the cause down. And so his men will stand there and watch us fail. But, I mean, we're still doing damage, like, that's the thing. Like, my Fountain Guard over here is still doing a lot of damage, and I kill off another general with them. So, I mean, going down fighting myself and Mevin. The Citadel Guard are also over here doing the same thing. Vanguard of King Elisar. A lot more of the strength has been shifted over to actually try and deal with what's left of Mevin's forces rather than what's left of mine. So that also does certainly play its part. Alcarondas Legion, victory seems certain. Only a fool could lose this battle. And I think at this point, yeah, you can see at this point we have finally fallen behind in this battle by 1%. Oof, that was a brutal death there. Almost cartoonish, actually. Meanwhile, 6 Balakith Axe Guard, surrounded on all sides. Still got 3 pikemen over here. We'll continue to skewer those Royal Guardsmen. Some Balakith marksmen are going to charge in, perhaps, but I'm going to see that and I'm going to charge into them, which is going to result in their demise in double quick time. That, I believe, was Mevin's general. Up over here. Yeah, indeed it was. So Mevin's army at this point being finished off by Umbar, and then all of these units will of course come across to finally bring down my Fountain Guard, which have been just so strong in this battle. Umbar, another boost as well. So this is definitely going to be the end for me. And I have to charge up this hill into them, otherwise those crossbows are just going to shoot me to death. And I won't give them the satisfaction of having them shoot me to death. They're going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. In melee with a sharpened chunk of metal. Yeah, surrounded on all sides now. But these Fountain Guard, they really did show how strong they are in that fight there. Nothing Umbar had against them was really a match. They couldn't really surround them as effectively as they would have liked. A large part of that is because Mevin arrived on the scene just in time for me to not get completely overwhelmed, and in the end it ended up costing him before it cost me, which is rather strange. But, such as it is, That's going to be the end of that. You can see now with Dark Wolf's army unmoving, the few units they had left at the top of the hill are now going to move into these guards of Osgiliath, and they're going to be run through. And then they're going to start moving down over there as well. You can see the Adunaim Shield Guard moving forwards. My Fountain Guard at this point thinking of wavering. They put on a good fight, but at this point there's not much else they can do. A handful of kills only is the most they're going to be able to contribute now. But even then, like, up against Harbingers and Naruna Royal Guard and that kind of unit, it's going to be more difficult even for the Mighty Fountain Guard to get a huge amount of kills more. A few more units marching down from on high, some Naruna Royal Guard. And there we go. A rout for my Fountain Guard. I'm actually not out of things yet. I still have these three lads over here, these guards of Osgiliath, who have also served me well. I'm going to slowly, pikes down, advance into them. See over here as well that Gondor, his Fountain Guard, who are still fighting against those Shield Guard over there. That was the last thing Dark Wolf did before his DC. Gondor archers getting killed by the Adunaim Shield Guard. Umbar marching down the hill. And actually, I think we just missed. Instead of our allies fled the field like cowards. It's me. It's my army. But I mean, fled the field is a little bit strong. Most of my men fought and fight to the bitter end, but now it's just going to be a case of clean up for Umbar, cleaning up Dark Wolf's unmoving army. Yeah, this is going to be the end for us, unfortunately. At this point, with these units over here not being able to move, it obviously means that we're not going to stand a chance. But if these units had been able to move, if Dark Wolf had been able to commit more reinforcements down there, considering how long myself and Mavin held on for, considering he was DC'd, this battle could very well have gone the other way. It was shaping up to be so close, and it still is. I mean, I think it does end within 5%, so it goes to show, up until this point, how good the battle really was. But even with that, it was still a very high quality battle, really. So, Fountain Guard surrounded and destroyed by Umbar, putting on a clinic at this point. They're going to be able to pick and choose their engagements nicely. There's the Gondorian general poking out among the officers there. They're going to get charged. He's going to get charged by spearmen though, and actually none of them actually connected with a charge with him. So. Not going to matter too much. Even stationary as they are, Dark Wolf's army is still going to extract a blood price from Umbar. That's what's going to happen when you're dealing with Citadel Guard and Nimlothian Honor Guard. Gondor Spearmen. They're in loose formation as well, so things are only going to be worse for them as Umbar marches through them. And over here, Balagai Pikes moving along. You can see 4% the differential. I think that does go up to 5 by the end, and that's where things end up. Citadel Guard victory seems certain. I think not. Surrounded on all sides. They may be strong, they may be armor piercing, but I think that's a bit much from the game to assume that, you know, they are still gaining the upper hand in this fight. Corsair Blackguard's victory almost a certainty. Defeat almost a certainty for the spears as well, unsurprising considering the slow but inevitable push of the Naruna Sentinels, again one of the finer pike units in the game. And against rudderless, leaderless Gondor spearmen. They're not going to have too much of an issue there. Well, finally a surround coming up here from the Naruna Royal Guard on the Citadel Guard, who are still giving as good as they get. I mean, this should probably be the end now. A full surround with another unit of high quality. And that you would imagine to be that. Now defeat seems certain. Now they're starting to take some real losses. I imagine the morale situation is also going to plummet. But even so, a fun battle to be a part of, I have to say. A bit of interest in this scenario as well with the prison situation. Like I said, I think as far as the rules go, I think we did pretty well to sort of jury-rig the rules there, because it ended up working out quite well. And this battle, it could have been one of those that ended up with like 1 unit versus 1 unit in the end, if Dark Wolf's game had not had a heart attack. But unfortunately, we shall never know. And in the end, his ill-disciplined army falls apart at the seams. And Umbar are going to be able to hold on to their haven here. They don't have any prisoners anymore as such. They're all dead now. And their army also lies in, well, not so much in ruins, heavily damaged, we shall say. But Umbar victorious. Not sure what settlement this is supposed to be. I'm going to have to look on one of the Lord of the Rings wikis, I think, and have a look and see if Umbar actually have any other ports other than Umbar itself. We shall see. Good to see the Corsairs back in force there. A lot of filthy pirates. Used actually very well. See, it seems to... Our brash general... It seems to think that I'm watching this battle from the perspective of Dark Wolf when I'm not. Oh well, no matter. And now, Nimlothi and Honor Guard, they're going to take a little while to fall by the wayside. We'll go up to ×2 speed and behold their final stand. But yeah, it was a fun battle to be a part of this. Like, these scenarios are always pretty neat. And even with someone disconnecting, this still resulted in a good game. Yeah, big thanks to, well, I'll save the thanks for the title screen. But as I said, it wasn't Eclipse that made this map. It was Captain Gervais. He's the one that populated the scenario as well. Gondor and Umbar, of course, classic enemies. Not sure who I'd say actually has the advantage in that matchup. I would say possibly in terms of just straight up infantry power, I'd give the slight advantage to Umbar, just because they do have the AP tools that they need in the Balakith Axeguard and Shield Bearers to exploit Gondor's weaknesses. And Gondor, you know, like they don't really have anything on the same level as the Alcarondas Legion either. Like, spears and the Fountain Guard and all of that stuff are really, really strong, but it is a bit one note from Gondor, whereas Umbar's strengths are a little bit more multifaceted and maybe a little bit better suited for facing Gondor than most, but it's slight, like I said. And that's in more of a general sense as well. That's if like you're in a sort of a perfectly balanced field battle 1v1. This obviously in a scenario, things are a little different. But on this occasion, I mean, this is all Umbar have left. Not a huge amount, like I said, and it's 3% the difference actually in the end, so it goes to show how much of a fight the Nimlothi and Honor Guard can put up, even as hamstrung as they are. 3% the difference. If only Dark Wolf hadn't crashed, that could have been the difference between victory and defeat. Well, no, I think Dark Wolf's PC was what snatched victory from us like thieves in the night. You can't actually see the names here, but I can say I was Eldacar here, so I got 2,900 kills, so I got the most kills, but I don't think I was the best player on the field by any means. I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that I was able to pad my kill count a bit with the Corsairs from Blindness's army, and yeah, I mean that really I think was the difference more so than anything else. Obviously, Hanksvitz was Dol Amroth, and then I don't know up here. I would suggest that Dark Wolf was probably 2,200 kills. I think that was what it was. I can't quite remember. As for Umbar, I have no idea who was who for Umbar. But I don't think any Umbar player played particularly badly, to be honest with you. I think that I would give maybe slight... I would give the MVP in this match, I think, to Waffles. He did some good cavalry play to do some damage to me. He had those units of Corsairs on the boat, which did some good damage to Mevon. Even into the late game, he was supporting in the mass pushes alongside Eclipse there. So I'd give him MVP. I don't know which of these armies he was, but I'd give it to him. I think the defenders, just in general, they took advantage of our approach. Like, even if Dark Wolf hadn't crashed, it still would have been very close, because they did take advantage of the situation. They saw that myself and Mevon were a little bit separated, and they decided to try and take us down 1v1. That could also have backfired. We'll never really know because of Dark Wolf's crash, because I think myself and Mevon held on better than maybe they expected. I think in particular the Fountain Guard ended up dishing out quite a lot of punishment to them. But no matter. We shall never know now, will we? But Umbar, good value for the win in the end. I think both sides played pretty well, all things considered. This army here, this was Darkwolf, Haldir, because he had the Nimlothian Honor Guard, which did very well towards the end, in spite of everything. Fountain Guard doing very, very well as well. Guards of Osgiliath actually getting focused down more so, perhaps. Good spread. A lot of units breaking 100 kills, which is what you want to see in a 4v4 siege if you're on the attack. Dervan, which must be Mevon. Veterans of Osgiliath doing nicely, actually. Good kills at range, and then obviously mucking in melee, holding back the hordes of Umbar so that he lasted just that little bit longer in his melee fight. A few units breaking 100 for him as well, including his elites, the Citadel Guard, Vanguard of King Elisar, Fountain Guard, all that good stuff. My army, my MVP is actually the Guards of Osgiliath, getting nearly 500 kills, so it does go to show that if you can get your pikes into a good engagement, I mean, early on, obviously, they were dealing damage to Corsairs, which, you know, pads their kill count out by 100 or so, I would say. But other than that, it was the fight on the bridge, really, because I only really committed them when I knew they weren't going to get just focused down by archers as much. So both my units of Guards of Osgiliath actually doing really, really well. My Citadel Guard, obviously not... The Citadel Guard was a weird one, because they were actually General's Bodyguard size, so there were only 50 of them. So that's worth bearing in mind. Axel Lasarnak did okay. Where'd my Fountain Guard go? There they are, 289. So again, similar to one of the Guards of Osgiliath. But yeah, my pole arm units were definitely the MVPs here. My Fountain Guards and my Guards of Osgiliath. My Wards of the White Tower also holding things down on the front line nicely. 166 kills. Gondor Infantry doing decently as well, 219. And my Archers, Militia Archers and Marksmen of Kaer-Andros. Militia Archers actually more so, because they put all of their ammo supply into Corsairs, whereas the Marksmen had to also skirmish with some Belagai, so not quite as efficient there. But yeah, a lot of good kills on stuff like Corsairs, but in the end, I was always going to have to lay down my life in order for Darkwolf to win. But unfortunately, his PC, his game, something just let him down, his internet perhaps. And in the end, the sacrifice of myself and Mevon, and Enkspitz from earlier on in the battle really, was in vain. And we ended up losing the scenario. But still, very fun to be a part of. A good map actually as well. Like, it's always good to see one of these new custom scenarios, because these maps are always fun to play on. As long as people don't add excessive features on the map which makes the frame rate absolutely tank, it's all good. And yeah, nice to see an Umbar themed map. Obviously Umbar on the defence, pretty scary, and in the end we weren't quite able to dislodge them, even if outside factors may have had a hand in that as well. So yeah, big thank you to Eclipse for inviting me to be a part of the game, and a big thank you to all the players as well for being a part of it, and a big thank you as well to Captain Gervais, who, while he wasn't in the game, was the scenario's creator. So yeah, hopefully there's more of this to come. As for what's next, again, not quite so sure. There's still the channel update in the further future, which we have to I'll have to start planning, because again, I kind of know it's either going to be one thing or the other, so it's not as if it's infinite possibilities and I don't know what I'm going to be talking about. It's either going to be one thing or the other, and yeah, again, it's one of those things. Like I've mentioned what I'm going to be talking about in a previous video, so I won't go into it in too much detail here, but suffice it to say that come September, things will change, either only slightly or quite drastically. The drastic change is going to happen at some stage regardless, but it may be delayed a little bit further, which is the more likely outcome, I think, based on everything that's going on. So yeah, that's something. But obviously in the near future, over the course of the summer, the schedule will remain largely the same as it is. I do want to add some new stuff if I can, but it's all about having the right thing. Like, that's really been the case over the last 2 years, really. Trying to find the right thing to add, but with how game development cycles and sort of appropriate new games take seemingly an age to come out now because of how long development cycles actually are, there are fewer opportunities for me to do that than perhaps I would like, but we shall see. There's always the matter of streaming as well, which I keep meaning to do, but I just don't feel confident enough to really like just dive on in without someone giving me a hand, and I think that someone would have to be J-Monster, possibly. Maybe for some Silmarillion. That's a possibility, but I couldn't offer any sort of timescale on that, or even if it's going to happen at all. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.